What's up, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I've got a book that I want to talk to you guys about. Wolverine and the X-Men, Volume 1. I have been wanting to read this run of X-Men comics for a good long time now. I've heard a lot of people say that it's really good, and so I was basically just biding my time, trying to buy like one volume a week, give or take. Sometimes I go a week without buying one, but I was trying to buy the entire run of this series by Jason Aaron before I would start reading it, because if I don't, I would read Volume 1 and then it might be a month and a half before I read the next volume. I want to have it all with me so that I can just read it all more or less back to back to back. And I've got all of the volumes now except for one volume, which I have ordered, and it's on the way. So I felt like I could go ahead and just start reading this run, and I read Volume 1 here, and I really enjoyed this. This was a very fun comic book, and this may sound like extremely high praise, but I think if this run continues to be as good as these 4 issues, then this could be one of my top 5 X-Men runs of all time, which is, like I said, very high praise. Now, I have a feeling it won't live up to that praise. I have a feeling that the series starts at a really high place and it kind of goes down a little bit. I've heard a lot of people say that it started off really good and just kind of became okay and wasn't just exceptionally good. I don't know if that's going to happen. That's not my experience. I've just heard other people say that. And my cat's in here. If you're hearing anything, that's my cat. Hey, Ajax. Hey. Okay, sorry about that. Cats need to be petted. So anyway, this is the first 4 issues of Jason Aaron's run on Wolverine and the X-Men, and what I plan to do, I don't know anything about what's going on in this series other than what I've heard other reviewers say. So I do know that there are 2 volumes of this series that kind of connect with Avengers vs. X-Men, and I'm very tentative about that because I have no desire to read Avengers vs. X-Men, and I really hope that Jason Aaron is a talented enough writer that he is able to make this book stand on its own without me having to read Avengers vs. X-Men. And I also hope that he's a talented enough writer that he can make his run stand on its own. So, like, this story is pretty good, this one right here, but if he keeps having to tie stuff into these big events that are happening across the company, I'm afraid that would, if it was me, that would drag me down. I would get sick and tired of that, and I'm afraid that, like I said, if the run continues to be as good as this, that it will be one of the top 5, but if there's a whole bunch of these crossovers and stuff, like Age of Ultron and Avengers vs. X-Men, that the book is having to tie in with, that will make it less enjoyable for me, unless he's just an exceptionally talented writer who is able to get around those things. I don't know, but I've heard a lot of people talk about issues around that time, and they're like, that's not that good. So I'm still going to try and keep an open mind. I'm still going to try to remain positive, but I don't know if the series stays at this height that it is at in the first 4 issues. So I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to try and read every volume of this run and just review it as I go. So for the most part, I don't really know what's in store for me here. And in a lot of ways, this is going to be kind of like a while back I did a review of the whole run of The Incredible Hulk by Bruce Jones. And with that, I also did not know what was in store for me because I had only read roughly the first half of that run, and then I had the entire run in trade, so I went ahead and just read each trade and reviewed it as I went. And with this, I'm basically going to be doing the same thing, where I don't really know what's in store for me, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it a lot more than I have with Bruce Jones's run. So I do know a little bit more of what's in store for me. So what is good about this? Number 1, I would say, is the artwork. I have always been a huge Chris Bachalo fan. There are times when he's not playing at 100%. For example, that new Age of Apocalypse miniseries from 2006. I didn't really care for what he was doing there, but for the most part, I think that he's a really great artist, and I really love what he's doing here. I love the design of this new school. For anyone who doesn't know, the premise of this book is that Cyclops and Wolverine are they've gone their separate ways, and Cyclops is keeping a lot of the X-Men on the Utopia Island near California, and he's kind of more of a militant X-Men guy. He's willing to do whatever it takes to protect the X-Men and protect the mutants. And Wolverine, he wants to take things back to basics. He wants to train these kids and let them get an education. And so he's restarted the school in New York, but he's calling it the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. And that's the premise here. And basically this whole storyline is that these two guys, or this guy and this woman, are at the school trying to grade it and determine if it's going to pass the inspection and it gets to be a school. And that's kind of what's going on here, but then hilarity ensues that kind of interrupts the inspection. And there's a lot of really fun characters here. There's a girl, I think her code name is Oya. I don't know how to pronounce it, but her name is Idy. And she was introduced in Matt Fraction's run. She was one of the 5 lights that were kind of associated with Hope Summers, and I believe she was also in the Generation Hope series. I haven't read Generation Hope, any of that series, and other than this, I had only ever seen her in that first volume that introduced her in Matt Fraction's run. Not Matt Fraction's first volume, but the volume that introduced her. And I really didn't have an opinion of her there, but here she's a really fun character, very quirky. And then you've got characters like Brew, Kid Gladiator, and I've heard a lot of people really praise those characters. I like them a lot. Easily my favorite character in this book is Quentin Quire, who I already knew from Grant Morrison's run on New X-Men, and I mentioned this on the Facebook page a while back, but I was saying that I was very tentative about Jason Aaron using Quentin Quire, because in Grant Morrison's run, Quire was basically a villain. He was misguided, but he was a villain. And so I was very curious how Jason Aaron was going to turn him into a cast member on the side of the Angels. And it's really interesting the way he is consistent with the character that we saw in Grant Morrison's run, while also able to change that character in such a way where he's not a villain like he was there, and it's consistent. That's really impressive. He's able to make it consistent with what we've seen before, while also changing the direction of this character so that he's more of a good guy, sort of. And it's really interesting. I'd say he's easily my favorite character, and I would just read a Quentin Quire series set at the school. Just focus entirely on him. I would love that. I know I'm not the only one who loves Quentin Quire, but this book definitely made me love him even more than I did before when he was in Grant Morrison's run, which there, I didn't love him that much. He was okay, but I didn't just have this burning love for him. So the premise is very exciting, very interesting, where you've got all these characters who say, Wolverine, you're a headmaster. I never thought I'd see that. And Wolverine's like, yeah, me neither. And it is a premise that's very bizarre, because I've always said Wolverine works best when he is kind of the second in command of whoever's in charge, and he's always there to question whoever's in charge. Whether it's Cyclops or Professor X or Storm, he's always the guy who says, are you sure that's a good idea? And the leader will say, yeah, that's a good idea, or no, I really don't know if it's a good idea, but we're going to do it anyway. And Wolverine will say, okay, whatever you say, I'm going to back you up on this. But he was always the guy to kind of back up the leader and also make sure that they can be the best leader that they can be. That's how he was in Chris Claremont's run in the 80s, so it's very interesting now to see him play the role of leader here. And it's going to be very interesting to see where Jason Aaron takes that in the rest of this series. And we've got a really good cast here. We have Kitty Pryde and Beast, who are both characters who I don't really like, but here they're used very well, and I really like the way that they're used here. We've got some minor characters that I wish were getting a little bit more to do, like Rachel Summers, Husk. We find out there's a whole bunch of other teachers at the school who we don't even get to see. So I wish that we got to see more of them, but the series is young at this point, so maybe we will get to see more of them as the series keeps going. And then we get some really interesting students, and I would just love to see more of those students, like Kid Gladiator, Brew. We get, spoiler, we get a Krakoa grandchild who becomes a student at the school. That's really exciting, really interesting. I love this book. I know that I've heard people say it gets worse as it goes, but I am very optimistic. I really hope that the rest of the series is as good as this. Even if it was half as good as this, it would still be pretty darn good. So I'm very excited about this, very excited to read more, and I will talk to you guys probably later in the week with a review of an episode of Batman the Animated Series. I don't think I have any other reviews for the rest of this week, so that's all I had to say about this book. I give it very high praise. If you haven't read this series, go read it right now. Go read this volume anyway. And that's all I have to say. So I hope that you guys liked this review. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And as for me, I will see you guys later in the week and also next week with more videos. So until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great rest of the day.